Good evening to the participants.
Good evening, Doc.
Good evening.
Thanks to all of you for keeping time tonight.
You're welcome.
I see Sister Robina is there also. Sister Robina,
Yes,
you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor.
Yes, I discussed the issue of timekeeping because in Africa we have problems with keeping time. But today at least we have begun in time. Thanks to all of you for coming to attend this and for sacrificing your time. I start by prayers. So, Sister Robina, may you lead us in a prayer?
Okay. Let's humble ourselves and we pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for each and everything you've done for us today. We thank you for the gift of life, for your protection always. And we thank you for this engagement that we are going to deliberate on. We pray for your wisdom. We pray for your presence in this meeting. And we pray that the ideas we are going to share here would not just remain in this forum, but they will create an impact for the workers in Uganda. In Jesus' name I've prayed.
Amen. So I will begin by giving a brief remark to open for the webinar, and then I will leave the rest of the discussion to those who are present. But because what we are talking about is very important for the workers, and also we are at a time when we are actually in Uganda electing our leaders to go and represent workers in the coming government, I think that we should not imprison ourselves into time that we will stop exactly 9. Those who will be willing to give their opinion, there will be ample time. So I will begin with a brief about my opinion regarding the webinar of today. I am sure that the title was well chosen, but in my mind, given the current period that we are in, I think that we are just discussing it, but those who are going to act are those we as workers are going to elect to represent us. So, to me, the title ought to be, how can the coming president implement effective policy on mitigating the impact of global capital in Africa, starting with Uganda? Because we have seen for many years, whatever we as workers talk about have not been attained to the fullest, not because we don't have policies in places, but because there might not be goodwill from other stakeholders involved. So in my opening remark, first of all, I want to thank all of the ladies who have attended because they are the mothers of our nation, and those gentlemen and any other distinguished colleague who might have attended. I thank all of you and all the advocates who are advocating for justice for the workers. I thank you for attending this webinar because we are not leaving this webinar here at the discussion table. We are going to forward this webinar discussions to the highest people in position of authority so that they understand what are our opinion as people who are representing workers or as ordinary workers, or as people in legal institutions that are endeavoring to fight for the rights of the workers. So it is a great honor for me to actually be granted the opportunity tonight to address all of you on this matter, because it touches the very heart of Africa's future, and also it is very important for us to understand that we are looking forward to a president that will come to implement effective policies to mitigate the impact of global capital while protecting workers genuinely and advancing labor rights to all the laborers. Apart from that, it is in my view that global capital has brought investment, yes. It has brought technology, yes. It has brought opportunities, yes. But it has also carried great risk of unchecked exploitations by institutions that have a lot of money to invest in our countries, in Uganda, in East Africa, in Africa, but leaving behind very little for the workers who work for those institutions. Also, global institutions have weakened local industries by putting into our nations huge capital, but draining our workers of the wages that they are supposed to provide for the workers, and the international community is actually benefiting more than the local workers. It has caused the erosion of workers' dignity in Africa, in Uganda, in East Africa, and that is not limited to internal workers. It also extends to externalized workers who are working outside Uganda, or outside Kenya, or outside Africa, to mention but the least. So, like many other African nations, Uganda stands at the crossroads. The policies that we adopt today will determine whether global capital becomes a force for employment empowerment, or it becomes a tool of exploitation of our workers who work from hand to mouth with no chance to reach the level of individual sustainable development that United Nations have set in its goals, and that many African nations and other developed countries have signed and have vowed to help underdeveloped countries to implement. So, preventing workers' exploitation in Africa, we as Ugandans must start with Uganda. In order to prevent exploitation, we must, after the elections, approach our leaders, especially the president, and beg our president literally to pursue 3 strategic pillars, which is strengthening Uganda government legal frameworks to align with international conventions in order to prevent workers' exploitation in Uganda, in Africa, and the world in general, but specifically to protect our externalized workers who are being exploited in the Middle East countries and other ASEAN countries. We have not yet found a correct way of preventing such exploitation. And I think that we have to now address our leaders directly, not just discuss within ourselves and expect us to come with solutions when we are not reaching out to our leaders. The second point is we have to literally beseech our president and the lawmakers, such as Right Honorable Anita, they must enforce labor laws that guarantee fair wages and equitable remunerations for the workers without segregation among the other workers and government officers in highest position of authority. We also need them to provide safe working conditions by law and provide protection against modern official slavery and child labor. By child labor, I refer to those who cannot go to school and are being forced by their parents to work in the farms because their parents cannot afford to send them to school. Our leaders must do something to prevent that. And by modern official slavery, I mean you go to very high offices and find people working for 200,000 a month, for 150, 300, 600,000 a month. I consider that one modern official slavery. And I think our leaders have to look deep in their hearts and deep in their mind and find logic. Is it really logical for someone to be working in your office for 200 or 300 or 600,000 while you know exactly how much you as a politician is earning, and that person have to leave early in the morning to come in time to work for you and to do everything and to bear the pressure of, be it border, traffic jam, while all those politicians, they know how they reach the office. I have experienced it, workers experience it every day, and I think we have to let our leaders know this frankly, candidly, not just as a discussion in a webinar, but the president must be made aware of what is happening. The third point ought to be the establishment of independent district labor courts to swiftly address disputes between workers and employers with binding awards and rulings, unlike the current labor officers and commissioners whose labor disputes resolution awards and rulings are limited by law, causing more backlogs in terms of referrals to only one industrial court. That I am clearly aware of the backlogs of cases in it because I am an independent member of the industrial court. So I am talking about what I feel the workers are suffering from. And I believe that it is one of the problems that we are facing because there are institutions that laborers are working for them. And when workers reach about 15 years, 20 years in their work, they just dismiss them unlawfully. And because those corporate institutions have money to hire lawyers to represent them, and the employers, the employees do not have the same amount of money to hire lawyers, always the corporate institutions win because the workers don't have the ability to follow up their cases. So I think after the election, we have to go to the president and to write Honorable Anita and to talk to them frankly and candidly about what is happening in our country, and we have to resolve that. It is their obligation because the nation is crying and they are crying blood. Corporate accountability and transparency cannot be done except if the president and the legal authority can force the corporate institutions to be accountable of the people they employ. The requirement of multinational corporations to publish their transparent reports on wages and working conditions and community impact, I believe, ought to be made legal because there are no requirements for them to publish anything regarding the wages, and there are so many people. They are either coming to courts or complaining about institutions employing them without contract. paying them very, very little amount in terms of wage. And I think that we have to beg our lawmakers to make laws that make multinational corporations to provide clear contract for all the people working in their institutions, from the gatekeeper to cleaners to the highest people in position of authority, and to publish transparent reports on wages, working conditions, and their community impact. And there is need to introduce binding agreements that ensure companies reinvest a fair share of profits into local communities and empower workers and trade unions to be heard by the governments. And that will not be done unless we all put our hands together and present all these problems and plights to the coming president. Workers must be protected. Rights of workers must be guaranteed. To protect the workers' rights to organize and bargain collectively must be protected. Workers these days are afraid. Even those who are working in institutions that claim to be providing justice for all are afraid to demand for their rights as workers. So we are talking about very lofty goals, while actually the issue is bigger than us discussing it in a webinar and letting it float in the internet. Therefore, the provision of training and resources for unions and leaders to train on ADR to enable them to be able to negotiate effectively with global corporations and countries where our externalized workers are exported to work like slaves without proper legal protection must be put in place. I am talking as someone who worked outside the country for many years, and I am acutely aware about what the externalized workers are suffering from. So, by implementing such measures, Uganda and other African countries can ensure that foreign investment uplifts rather than exploits our workforce. Another point that we have put in the discussion is advancing labor rights in Africa, which also for us in Uganda, I believe it must start with Uganda. So beyond preventing exploitation, I also insist that after the elections, we must go to the president and to lawmakers, beginning with Right Honorable Anita, and literally beg them to proactively advance labor rights to build a resilient and equitable economy, which requires 4 key strategies. The first one being living wages and social protection for all types of workers. Today, as I speak, only the politicians can afford to go to the best hospitals. Only the children of politicians are capable of being sent to the best schools inside the country and outside the country. The majority of Ugandans cannot even afford to send their children to school. So I think that these are issues that we cannot resolve it on internet. We have to take it to the top leaders of our country. Apart from that, the establishment of a national minimum wage requirement tied to the current high cost of living that our politicians and their children never feel, but ordinary workers experience it daily and feel it daily, ought to be legalized. We have to insist that the government must make a minimum wage, because we do not have a minimum wage. Investors come, and I have experienced it with one person from Europe who asked me, what is the minimum wage? And I think by our law, I don't know, is it 6,000 shillings? And he was like, so anyone can come and just pay a minimum wage of 6,000 and that is okay? And somebody was next to me, said, no, 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 no. It is up to you. You can just look at the situation and then give what is, I mean, why do we have to leave the fate of our people in the hands of international community? International community is coming to invest here. We do not have minimum wage to protect our workers. You go to where people are selling cars, they are all flooded with foreigners. The majority of them are investors from outside. Welcome to Uganda, the Pearl of Africa. But what about the people who are working with them? They have no single contract. I have gone there, I have asked them questions, one after another, from place to place to place to place. None of those have a single contract because none of those so-called investors are willing to provide minimum wage. But if it is by law, all those people who are working with investors will have at least minimum wage, not go there and depend on petty cash of somebody who have bought a car and have given them 10,000, 5,000, 20,000, and then they go back home without a wage. There is need for the expansion of social safety nets, including national health insurance, in direct collaboration with the Minister of Health. And I repeat, with the Minister of Health. And why am I saying like that? Today, if any member of the industrial court panelist is to get sick or leg get broken or a body knocks him or her, that panelist does not have health insurance. And I'm talking about the High Court of Laborers, the Industrial Court, which I'm a member. So I think our problem needs to be taken to the people in the highest position of authority, because unemployment benefits, amongst others, and things like health insurance attached directly under the Ministry of Health can shield workers from economic shocks and difficulties they face when they get sick or when they get accident or when they become too old to continue to work. So, in conclusion, the president of our country ought to prioritize investment in sectors that create decent jobs for our citizens, including renewable energy, agro-processing, and digital services that are legalized in such a way that international investors pay at least minimal wages to the people working in those industries. And also, the office of the president must genuinely monitor all the presidential supports and the government funds that are given to small and medium enterprises that are locally owned to ensure that capital circulates within the communities and not embezzled by the officials who are supposed to provide those funds to the SMEs. Other than that, we need regional cooperation. Our president must appoint people who are capable to work with African Union and international partners to harmonize labor standards across the borders, because we do not have people to go and arbitrate, for example, for our workers outside Uganda. So we don't even know what is happening to our workers outside the borders of Uganda. We need to prevent race to the bottom, which are practices where countries compete by lowering labor protections to attract foreign capital. Besides that, education and skills development is necessary to invest in vocational training, as we are already doing, and digital literacy to prepare our workers for the future economy, including even those who are working with the government, even though they are old, but they have experience. They need to be coached to adapt to digital literacy Since I have gone to the industrial court, I have never used anything else except my computers to prepare my coursework, to prepare my independent opinion, and I'm old, 53 years old. So I believe that even people who are working in the government can still be coached to adapt to digital literacy. Another very important issue is partnership with universities and technical institutes to align our curricula with labor market needs. We have not yet reached the level of aligning our curricula with the international labor market needs and even with our national market needs. We need that. We are all workers. So, my fellow workers, the challenges before us are immense, but so are the opportunities that peaceful governance has brought for us. Global capital is not inherently exploitative. It is the absence of the implementation of strong practical policies that allows exploitation to thrive against our workers. We will vote for the coming president as workers, but this time, immediately after the elections, we must go, yes, we must go to the elected president and beseech him to actively act decisively to protect workers, to advance labor rights, and to ensure that Uganda and Africa at large becomes a continent where national prosperity is shared with those who work for it, not prosperity for politicians only. We need a nation and an African countries where dignity is upheld and labor is valued from grassroots, where workers from the lowest to the highest, which is the president, are valued, where the dignity of workers are also upheld, not only the dignity of politicians, where labor justice for all is attained from the local council one and from the district labor officers by jurisdictional amendments, which I believe Right Honorable Anita can enhance in the parliament, and not wait for workers' backlogs of cases that are sleeping in archives files in the industrial courts, where workers cannot attain justice due to many reasons, including time limitations, inability to attend distant court hearings, and lack of full-time judges, among many other reasons. So as workers, let us commit ourselves today, tonight, tomorrow, to shaping presidential policies into policies that transform global capital from a threat into a tool for workers' liberation. The future of Africa's workers depend on practical presidential policies, not selfish politicians' policies. With that opening remark, I thank you all, and now I call upon our participants to contribute, beginning with Dr. Awinda Otieno. Please, Dr. Awinda.
Yes, Dr. Oling, good evening, everyone.
Good evening to you. You are most welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry for joining late. I had some engagement, but here I am. I would want to give some few comments on the topic that we have today.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much. So we are talking about strategies that will help us to work to prevent workers from any form of exploitation, and then also advancing the labor rights of these workers. I want to say that the working force is at the heart of everyone, and therefore the protection of these people in terms of the wages that they get, in terms of safety and health, is very important to be able to achieve what we call the decent work. And at the same time, we are looking at the productivity of these workers, that when these workers are protected, the wages are fair, workplaces are safe, and when companies are also accountable and economies grow more resilient and more sustainable, then it will become very, very important. So we are saying that we need to look into the impact of the global capital, which we are saying is not anti-business agenda, but it is pro-human agenda. And that one is very, very important. So as we look at this, we want to come up with ways through which you can be able to prevent any form of exploitation of these workers, because we are talking about within our borders and also outside our borders, so that form or those forms of where workers become so vulnerable should be avoided. And therefore, one way that this one could be done is by strengthening labor laws and also enforcing them, because we know that we have laws. The problem is implementation. The problem is enforcement of some of these laws. So when these laws are enforced, we need to update the national labor laws to meet international standards. For example, ILO conventions. We need to increase funding for labor inspectorates and also enforce agencies and impose meaningful penalties for wage theft, unsafe working conditions, and also illegal subcontracting. And that one will always ensure that the labor laws are enforced and also are strengthened. We also need to ensure a fair and transparent supply chains. I know that that Dr. Ling has alluded to that one, as delve on that. But I would still be able to just give my own comment that we require companies to map and publicly disclose their supply chains, mandate human rights and labor rights due to due diligence for all large firms, and also enforce accountability for violations occurring in subcontractors or also about the overseas suppliers. So when you have that, that will be very important. We also need to protect freedom of association and also collective bargaining. We have discussed this one earlier in our previous webinars. We are talking about how do we ensure that there is that respect for collective bargaining agreements for that matter. So we need to protect them so that we also have the association or the workers can freely associate. They can have unions, which will always ensure that that they channel or channel their rights, because without unions, then you find that workers sometimes can be exploited. So with the unions, these unions can be able to allow the workers to freely congregate, freely come up with chart their way, and also freely picket if there is need for that. So here we are talking about you need to guarantee workers' rights to form and join unions without retaliation, strengthen legal protections for collective bargaining and strikes. We are saying that there should be that freedom for demonstration of association and of picketing, so that workers can channel or can be able now to channel their rights and be able to get what they need. We also need to prohibit union busting tactics, intimidation, or forced union avoidance training. Address exploitation in the platform of economy or the economy. Establish clear criteria for worker classification to prevent mislabeling employees as independent contractors. As Dr. Linger said, we need to come up with solutions that are geared towards protecting the workers from the least, the lower cadre workers, to the highest. As we say that that one now includes or goes up to the president, who could be the highest in terms of the cadres of employees. Also, we need to address, we need to establish or make algorithmic management transparent and subject to oversight. Ensure that workers have access to minimum wage, social protections, and dispute resolution mechanisms. And sometimes you go through other mechanisms, which include ADR, where you come up with ways through which you can be able to amicably solve some of these issues. We need to promote living standards or living wages, and also come up with social protection. Implement living wage policies that reflect local cost of living, expand access to social protection, health insurance, paid leave, and unemployment benefits regardless of employment type. And this will also include various types of leaves, including maternity leave, paid leave when somebody goes to maybe go for further studies, for example, so that those ones, the pay can be always to protect them, and also be able to shield them from economic difficulties in the process of them going for the leave, and also acquiring higher education. We need to create also portable benefits systems for workers who move between jobs or also platforms. So it's very important that we can have all those strategies to be able to help us ensure that workers are protected, they are not exploited, and therefore we say that let us commit to a future where economic progress goes hand in hand with human dignity, and let us ensure that the global capital serves the people, not the other way around. We should not have the global capitals be not serving the people, but people serving serving the global capital. So that's what we are saying. And therefore the challenge today is that today is not about globalization, but to humanize it, to ensure that global prosperity is built not on the exploitation of many, but on the empowerment of all. Are we able to have people being employed, being empowered for that matter? And that one comes in when we talk about enforcement of laws. We talk about ensuring transparency in supply chains, ensuring health and safety, and all that. So as we move on, that is what I can say in the first, as we start. I know we'll still be able to come back and talk more about this very, very important topic that will ensure that workers' productivity is enhanced and these workers become motivated, become innovative, and we expect to have very good economic growth for that matter. I submit, Dr. Oleng.
Thank you so much. I beseech Sister Robina to give us our opinion.
Thank you very much, the participants and listeners in your different capacities. Before I comment about how workers can confront global capital, I think I'll just make a few remarks on how global capital is affecting labor standards in Uganda and Africa at large. And I'll start with a comment that, first of all, African workers are the ones that are benefiting, that are running the global economy. When you talk about global capital, what gathers to my mind is international investment or foreign direct investments, the big multinational corporations, and how they're shaping work relations in Africa and Uganda in particular. What we have seen for the last decade, where globalization is at rise, and where we are seeing also the increasing growth of technology, we are seeing employment relations change. We are seeing a lot of new work arrangements on the labor market. For example, outsourcing. Outsourcing is on the rise, and outsourcing is characterized with precarious work. But we are also seeing multilateral employment relations on the rise. Our laws were designed for a homogeneous workforce that is controlled by one employing entity. Now we are seeing many employing entities managing work relations. You find a company like Mukwano having about only 100 workers who are directly recruited, and then the rest are belonging to different recruitment agencies. And what that brings now is a triangular sort of employment relationship as opposed to a personal and bilateral employment relationship. But all that is coming because of the globalization and the increasing impact of global capital on work relations. You talked about the low wages, and the previous speaker also talked about the low wages. And these low wages are coming also from the fact that global capital is causing race to bottom kind of development, where countries now compete in terms of offering cheap labor. Some few years ago, when you'd go to our Uganda Investment Authority website, one of the things that was written there, among the reasons as to why you should invest in Uganda, was the component that we have cheap labor. So it's like we were competing to have investors come to invest in Uganda because we boast of cheap labor. So because of that, when the investors come to Uganda, they feel they're actually doing us a favor. We are offering cheap labor. We don't have a minimum wage. So definitely we can't expect Ugandans to get a higher wage with that kind of scenario. But also the other impact is on the other impact on of global capital is on the continuing misclassification of workers. Global capital now wants to misclassify workers as just partners or independent contractors. Global capital does now not see workers as employees where they have the ability to protect, but if possible, they want to hide these employees to be like just business partners. And there we are seeing, for example, in the new forms of work like platform workers, but also we are seeing workers, even in these normal relations, being given commission agreements where you work and you're paid like on commission based, but you're still classified as independent, an independent contractor. So for me, one of the strategies of confronting all this is on, the moderator talked about the political will. The political will needs to be there. We have the laws, existing laws, first of all. Yes, they might be good, but they need to be modernized and strengthened to meet the current challenges on the labor market. We don't have a law that regulates outsourcing. We don't have a law that regulates fixed term contracts in this country. Workers are being given fixed term contracts of 3 months, renewable, then someone works like that for 20 years. But also what comes with the vulnerability behind that is that employers are even using these fixed term contracts to promote union busting. For instance, if a union went to organize workers of a certain company, and the company doesn't want a union, what that company is going to do is that they will not renew the fixed term contracts of all those workers who have joined a trade union. By the time the trade union secures a recognition agreement, where I have seen some trade unions actually saying we have not been recognized for 10 years. And for 10 years, the union is going to a workplace as they keep chasing the workers through indirect non-renewal of these fixed-term contracts. Other countries have safeguards for fixed-term contracts, but in Uganda, fixed-term contracts are very deregulated. So we need not only to strengthen the laws, but we need to modernize them. We need to understand the current challenges on the labor market, what has changed, and then what does the law provide. Our laws are becoming a mismatch to the problems that we have. Trade unions, our trade union penetration in the country right now stands at 7%, but there are many challenges. It's not like trade unions are not organizing. There are trade unions that are very serious on the ground. They want workers to join, but there's a lot of union busting being used against them. And of course, when workers are not protected when they join a union because of victimization and all that union busting, they lose the momentum. But also the other thing is on ensuring that we have a fair trade kind of regime. What kind of agreements is our country, is Uganda signing with these multinational corporations? What kind of trade agreements is Uganda signing with other countries? Some of these agreements actually tie us because, for example, if you find a trade agreement, a bilateral maybe trade agreement where you see an investor, there's a strong investor protection clause, and that investor protection clause actually makes Uganda to always prefer cheaper standards. For example, if that investor protection clause talks about an investor being compensated for his business maybe not doing well, definitely Uganda is not going to put a minimum wage. So we need also to have transparent, fair trade agreements. Then the other thing is on enforcement. Even if we strengthen these laws, but what about enforcement? And this enforcement is still I would still tag it to the political will of the president. I do not think we don't have resources for ensuring that, for example, labor courts function. The resources are there, but it's it's just the missed priorities. Imagine an amendment to Ladasa was in 2020, where we're supposed to have 5 judges, but it's now 5 years down the road, we don't have the judges. The labor officers, you find a district with only 1 labor officer, and then that labor officer is expected to inspect, is supposed to do to receive complaints and adjudicate them. So you can't talk about enforcement without a political will, because one of the things Ministry of Labor keeps raising is limited funding. They would really want to do inspections. Recently, I was just looking at some research that was done by Economic Policy Research Center, and it was so amazing that just last year, the only inspections that were done were about there were actually less than 200, and we have million workplaces. So if the whole of the year, the whole year inspections that were done were less than 200 workplace instructions, then how do you expect labor standards really to be respected? So we need the government to have a will when it comes to enforcement. The other thing someone talked about, the transparent, fair and transparent supply chains. I think we also need a supply chain law or a due diligence law, because most of these multinational corporations are really lowering standards in the supply chains. And yet there's already an opportunity for us that most of these multinational corporations that come to invest in Africa or Uganda, they have obligations. They have obligations to respect labor standards. Actually, we can even take them on in their countries where they are headquartered. For example, we have the OECD guidelines that bind multinational corporations to respect standards wherever they operate in their business relationships. So we can actually leverage on those laws that they're already tied from wherever they're coming from. So why should they come to Uganda and actually be the ones to abuse labor standards? So we need to see how we can either come up with a supply chain law or a framework. I know Uganda adopted a national action plan on business and human rights, but how can we strengthen it to make sure these multinational corporations are held accountable for labor rights violations? For now, I beg to end there.
Thank you so much, Sister Robina. Thanks to God, we have a lot of participants, and I do not want to compel anyone to speak, but Dr. Biakatunda, if you have an opinion you want to give, you may give, and then we hand over to the rest of the participants. Anyone who have an opinion, I beseech them. We are going to have time to give to everyone who is patient enough, because for me, I'm patient enough to wait for everyone to give their opinion. So Dr. Biakatunda, please.
Thank you so much, moderator. And I want to thank you for this topic today and our dear participants who have joined. I think basically I must mention that I'll just add my voice. And I think as a point of emphasis, which you have actually come up with, is having strong labor unions, strong policies. These are very important aspects, because you find that basically we need to have an aspect on organizing and ensuring that at least there is recruitment, and the other thing is emphasizing the issue of ESCO recruitment into these multinational organizations. Then the other one is having vibrant policies. This is very important, because this collaboration should actually be clear right from the onset. You find that even when our people are engaged in this, the aspect of, for example, social security is not normally addressed. And I think panelists and you, the moderator, have emphasized the issue of contractual obligation. What are the contracts? Are they available? What are the details of the contracts per se? These are very important aspects. But I think so far so good. I'd like to inform you that even when we talk of global capital, I think these are very important aspects that we need to address.
Dr. Byakatunda, you are cutting
And I
off.
will treat it as a privilege to translate this webinar into actionable points, whereby we can come up with petitions like, I'm actually traveling. I would do make that. Let me just listen, and because my network is not actually very clear, I thank you.
Okay, you are most welcome. I believe there is a brother who raised hand. Please, may you give your opinion?
Good evening, team.
Good evening, you are welcome.
Yes, thanks so much for this topic. Unfortunately, I've arrived late, and I had waited so much for the speech from Madame Kagoye. I do not know whether this session is always recorded so that we can get anyway.
Yes, brother, you have gone off. May we have Alum Susan?
Yes, Doctor.
You raised hand, please.
Good evening to you,
Good
members.
evening. You are welcome.
I have attentively listened to you, to Sister Robina and Dr. Abdul. I would like to say that regarding the protection of workers, I think we first have to understand the dynamics, especially that surround the minimum wage. And my greatest question is, as we argue, one thing we must appreciate is that Uganda's labor situation is largely dominated by the private sector. And as we talk about the private sector dominating the labor section, the labor situation is the most unsafe and unregulated, if I'm to put it together. Now, the question of protecting workers means that we have to pay attention to the details to understand why, in the first place, we do not have a minimum wage. Is it that the president does not just have a political will? Or it is because of a fear factor that is driving us? Because my imagination is, owing to the fact that Uganda's economy is largely dominated by the private sector, I'm sure that whoever is planning our economy, especially when we look at our NDP plans, will realize that there's no need for us to actually leverage the minimum wage because Uganda's investment levels are still growing. As the investment levels grow, I think that poses a threat to the government to institute a minimum wage. For if you look at studies across the globe, economies that have instituted minimum wages have grown to a certain level for them to realize that it is now time for us to regulate that in order to improve on the lives of our people. But I also think if we went into trying to understand still, our political wing does seem to fear to touch that, largely because we are not as safe as yet to handle it. Now, as labor movementists, our interest is to pull up the workers' working conditions, advocate for minimum wage in an economy where the politicians know this is not safe enough for us. So what should we do? What are the things that we should pay attention to? I think going back to the drawing board, we need to pay attention to those details that are included in the contracts to ensure that whatever it is that is included in the contracts are either in favor of the workers, or if they are not, then they are made better for the workers so that the working conditions improve. It is true we do not have, like Dr. Ling said, there's no particular wage range that can be used to assess these labor, the labor costs, if I'm to put it. But if I'm to use the National Teachers Policy, for example, the National Teachers Policy that was released in 2019 seems to propose that a teacher with a bachelor shall be paid some amount of money that alludes to close to 1 million shillings. That is what I understood when the policy was being rolled out. I got the privilege of attending some of the workshops, that for as long as the teacher goes to that level of education and has been taken into service, the minimum the teacher can be paid is that amount of money. And then the gap is left open. That is in the teaching. Those that have interest, please pick interest in the National Teachers Policy and you'll read that. And it gives us a lot of other opportunities that a teacher can explore that can make the working condition better. The question is, are these being followed, or we are still leaving the forces of demand and supply, as is the case right now? Because when you look at the current situation, the entire wage determination is left to the forces. And then there are lots of things that are not attended to. For example, most of our workers do not have health insurance. And that's a fact. Not because they are not aware of it, but these employers find a way of leveraging it such that it does not seem to be a priority to them. Now, if we pay attention to pulling some of those small details and then pulling the strings so that they are all attended to, I think the working conditions can go up and improve on the workers' conditions. And then those, to me, are the exploitation points that we need to pay attention to. Working overtime and then overtime unpaid, to me, those are situations. When we pay attention to those details and keep them closed, those are the gaps that we have. Meanwhile, we keep waiting or keep pushing for the politicians to appreciate that we need a minimum wage. I've had the president speak about Uganda going into the middle economy. I don't know what that exactly means, but if we are there, I did economics. I do not know if what I understood at that time still applies, but I think we are away from the takeoff stage. Now, if we are away from the takeoff stage, there are characteristics that, as I observe, we have worked towards it. Now, what is the government planning? How has the government planned to have the workers of the country fit into that kind of economy? Are we going to go in the segmented way, in the unequaled pay way, just because a few are favored and others are not? I would like to submit to this level and allow us to continue this. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Kenneth, you have raised your hands for a long time. Please give us your opinion.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, please.
I'm so sorry. I had just got out of the plane, so the network was still disturbing me so much. But I was inquiring that these sessions recorded, because we couldn't want to miss out something, especially I was eagerly waiting so much to hear the contribution from my elder sister, Miss Kagoye. You know, I can't always miss out her knowledge in what she speaks. So I do not know whether there is anything we can feel so that even those, like some of us who haven't been able to attend fully, can access what has been contributed today.
Yes, it is recorded, and we will ensure that we create a platform for all those who want to follow all the webinars, the one for today, and for tonight, and the previous ones. God willing, we are going to create a platform to have it for everyone to access. Thank you so much.
Okay, waiting so much eagerly. Please do not forget my number.
Okay, please.
Okay, sir.
May we listen to Honorable Adrin, who is also an independent member of the Industrial Court. Honorable Adrin, you are welcome. Okay, I think Adrin is not there. We have Aneno raising hands. May we listen to your opinion?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ling, the moderator. Sister Robina, Council Robina, and then the presenter, the previous presenter, all protocol observed.
Thank you.
I was very much impressed with the opening remarks of Dr. Ling and Council Robina. I can't remember the name of the last presenter. I can't see it. I want to put my point in this way. The workers of this country are truly under attack. Why am I saying this? It is not an attack maybe in terms of not employing them. The government has created the jobs, and indeed the jobs has been created. But I think when the industrial policy was being developed, it was developed without the involvement of the workers, the representation of the trade union. And this has left workers a little bit behind. And looking at the current labor market, because the government is now putting industrial parks, I want to give one example. In different parts of the country, I'm taking example of Namambe alone. I understand it, the investors that are there, majority are Ugandans, about 800 factories. Because last time we moved together with Honorable Davina Anyekun, the Minister of State. Now, when we look at these industrial parks, you will find that it is well set up, but I think when it comes to the side of the workers, there was minimum efforts, because you'll find that there's no housing units for workers. Today, development is taking place. The workers are trekking miles and miles away from Kampala. Automatically, you have to reach the workplace tired, helpless, and you start rolling the machines. Of course, we roll the machines to make the GDP of this country. It is day and night, but you will find that the fundamental rights of the workers are not respected by numbers of employers. You go to Mbalala, they are set up of factories there, but majorities are in Mbalala. When you move around again, majority of the employers are, I think, the Chinese. And when you do your own research, how much are these workers earning? you will come across even some payment of 5,000. A worker will tell you, I don't have lunch. I don't eat lunch. I don't drink water. But how do you expect me to work without eating, without breakfast, and I am rolling the machines? Now today, the new technologies are coming. The just transition, climate change is also affecting the country. Are we moving together as workers in this transition which is taking place? With the new technologies that are coming, the automation, and many other things are going to take place. How prepared are the trade unions? The trade unions are in their different world today as I speak. There is no proper representation of the workforce. Every eyes lies in parliament. Everyone wants to go in parliament without understanding the pillars of the trade union, without understanding the representation of the trade union. I like the way Dr. Ling put it that after the election, let's go and meet the president. But even if we meet the fountain of honors, I believe the trade union has been there. Why can't they represent and speak the reality to the president on what is happening to the Ugandan workers? Some of us, we speak with the pain in our hearts because tomorrow it will be your child who will be working in this industry. Today, the level of precarious work, how can a factory employ 2,000 workers or 1,000 workers? And half of them are precarious. There is what is called union busting, as Sister Robina put it. The union busting is there. Somebody is being called a contractor. This is a casual laborer. This is a piece rater. This is outsourcing. Somebody is already employing these workers, but inside here is being paid by another employer. Is this what we are supposed to do in the country? NSSF are being deducted, not remitted. Even if it is reported, nobody will follow. I work for 20 years when I expect my saving and it is not there. Even if we, the trade union, we negotiate where trade union exists and we negotiate collective bargaining agreement, the salary increment will not be enough. Today, we should even be speaking of the living wage. If we take the family of 5, take a worker maybe in a factory, how much is that worker spending in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year? How much for a family of 4 and a family of 5? And we are talking of a minimum wage of how much? Can it take my child to a better school? Can I eat properly with my family if I'm earning the 200 or the 150? Are we seeing the level of the sex workers in these various corners of our young daughters and girls? What is the problem? So indeed, it is challenging. And here is a situation now. We have our representative in parliament. What stopped them from meeting the president? Is it very difficult for them to make an appointment and speak about the workers? In parliament, we have given them the mandate. For the last 5 years, they are there. What have they said? We have several petitions around. Why is it not being presented? So unless we understand the cause, how workers are suffering, the level of the fundamental rights of the workers, because it is a constitutional right. The labor laws are there, but the lamentation of lack of implementation is day and night. What are we going to do? Uganda is one country that has already ratified Convention 190 to stop violence and harassment in the world of work. One of the violence is on the fundamental rights of the workers to form and join the trade union. Workers are not allowed to form and join the trade union. Council Rubin has put it. You fight to get a recognition agreement for 1 year. You are fighting to get one from one company. He will even take you to high court. He will even take you to industrial court. Now, what is it? And yet it is our rights to form and join the trade union. Our workers are supposed to be represented. So the trade union started from the private sector, not from the public sector. Because in the history, it was workers fighting for their rights. The long working hours, the maternity leave, the paternity leave, today, even the reproductive health of women. Some factory you are not supposed to conceive. When the lobuto is coming out like this, you are fired. As if they are not produced by women. So I am sorry. I think I'm taking a lot of time because we are on the ground. We are organizing, but there's a lot of union busting as I speak. Whether we come with a minimum wage, I don't think the minimum wage will be enough for the workers of this country. Because if the private sector are speaking of a million, how about the worker in the factory? Can we speak of a million? What can we do? So, as Dr. Ling has put it, it needs someone who can explain clearly to our president to know what is happening. We are happy about the creation of jobs. We are very happy, but the economy is being cheated under precarious work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your enlightenment. Do we have any brother or sister who want to participate before we close? Okay, any brother and sister who want to say something, you are most welcome.
I would like to thank you. I think our dilemma in regard to protecting our workers is largely a failure within and outside our own arrangement. Now, appreciating the challenges we have and putting together on a round table to define just exactly how we should do it should be the way forward. Our representatives at different levels have definitely done their part. We do not have the ability to judge every one of ourselves right now. Moving forward, the best is for us to resolve on how to move from now so that we can leverage the gap that is available. I want to thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Any other brother or sister who want to say something, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. This is James. I want to thank the presenters for the very, very good narration. I appreciate. I am sorry I joined a bit late, so I'll not take you back. If I have missed something, I'll gain in the next presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Awinda, maybe you might have a remark you want to.
I want to say something in support of what Sister Mena said and also Sister Loom about implementation of trade unions. I think it is very important that the government give respect to this union, because it's like the unions are there, but to some extent they're being compromised. in Uganda, from what I can hear. I'm talking from Kenya, and I know that in Kenya we have unions, and they also always champion for the rights of workers. Though I know it's not very easy for the leadership to be able to come down and maybe respect or show the respect for these particular collective bargaining agreements. But it is very important that you have minimum wage, so that when you have the multinational companies coming in to be able to invest in our countries, workers are paid, but there's need for some standard wage that is supposed to be paid. And then we are talking about the living wage, depending also based on the living on the cost of living, based on the inflation in the country. You'll find that the wage, the money, someone works, but then the wage is too low, which will always make them not be able to enjoy what they're doing. And you have said that the moment the worker is protected, and the moment they're not able to get what they're supposed to be paid for, then these workers always become demotivated. And by the end of the day, we have a slower economic growth. Now we are saying that therefore that we need also to strengthen the voice of the workers, strengthen the representation in terms of these unions, so that if the unions are going to be compromised, can we come up with people of reputable character so that they can be able now to have this union or lead these unions, and then finally they can always champion the workers' rights. But again, now that we have the MP around, it is very important that when they go to parliament, they should discuss some of these issues that are affecting the workers, so that workers become protected. And if need be, also that they can be able to meet the president, as my colleagues have said, is very important that by the end of the day, our workers should come up from work as they work on development of the economy, and also of ensuring that there is that increased GDP. We cannot have that increased GDP if workers are not protected. So it's very important that we protect the workers. I also talked about what about the workplace health and safety protections. So we need to also have that. We need to come up with some third-party audits of high-risk workplaces. Are we able to audit these places and come out with disclose what is taking place, so that we don't have coverage or something being covered? Workers are suffering, but you find that they suffer under silence. It's very important that we have that. We need to support also cross-labor alliances to match the global reach of multinational corporations. I had somebody say that most of the companies, most of the jobs in Uganda are given by the private sector, and therefore it means that some of them come from across the border. Now, when they come in, they need to have some standards which will ensure that workers are treated fairly across the board, and that one becomes very important. Can we also encourage worker participation in governance, so that we talk about in some countries we have some what we call the board representation, our workers being represented in the management of some of these companies. We can also look at public procurement and policy incentives, promote responsible practices within the workplaces, and that one becomes very, very important. So we need to tie government contracts and tax benefits to compliance with labor rights and standards. We need to reward ethical companies with preferred procurement status, and also we need to have labor rights certifications for industries with high risk exploitation. So it's very important that if what we are talking about is not coming out clearly, is not being given to the workers, I think it is high time that this one goes to the top office, so that the top office listens to it, and they can be able to see how can we have our workers protected, so that the wages that are given, the workplace safety is enhanced, and that one I think is very important. So let us endeavor to ensure that workers' rights are protected. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sister Neno, you want to say something? Sister Neno, you want to say something, Neno Catherine?
Maybe
No,
Doc,
I
I don't
think
know
I'm
the
done. Thank you.
Doc, could I say something?
We have 3 people, Madam Robina, and Sister Neno, and Dr. Biakatunda. So let us, we start with who now?
We can start with Sister Robin, I think.
Okay, fine. Let's start with the ladies. Let Sister Robina begin, and then we go to Sister Neno, and then Dr. Biakatunda, you will close.
Okay.
Okay, Sister Robina, please. You are welcome.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor. Mine was some sort of a reaction or compliment to Sister Alum when she talked about the role of private sector and the fact that our economy is dependent heavily on the private sector. And for me, I see also that is where our problems escalate. The government, one of my closing remarks is that the government needs to increase its role in public policy, its role in investment, its role in managing the economy. It should not, this whole thing of leaving everything to forces of market and to forces of demand and supply, the very things that are leading to workers being commodified. So the government needs to increase its role in development. We cannot imagine Uganda, for all the years we have existed, we are having informal public transport. And you expect workers who are earning less than 150,000, 200,000 to be productive at work when even reaching there. Actually, I think it was a research that was done by Frederick Embert, Steve Tank, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where they were saying the majority of the workforce actually work to they walk to their workplaces and from different, very many long distances. So even that tells you that even workers cannot even afford public transport. We would expect that, okay, if government is collecting taxes, let it put those taxes in trying to provide for public goods that make in providing for public goods, then the workers, some of these costs will be subsidized. But now everything is privatized: education, health, public transport, and then a worker is earning 200,000. But even, I don't know, we have not actually talked about tax justice for workers. When it comes now to those workers who are seemingly earning high, almost 45 or 50% of their money is taxed. So they still take very little money back home. And then the comfort would be like, okay, the government is taking almost 40% of my salary, but what is it doing with it? When my child gets sick, I'll have to get money from my pocket. My children cannot access equitable, cheap education. I still have to rely on debt to make sure my child goes to a good private school. So I think we also need to question workers. We need to question these other policies that indirectly affect workers. We shouldn't just remain in the workplaces, but there are these general policies actually that have a very big bearing on the workers, because lest we forget that workers are citizens, they are consumers, and they are taxpayers as well. So for me, my concluding remark is that the government needs to increase its role in development. It shouldn't just leave it to the private actors. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Sister Neno, you had raised your hand.
Sorry, yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I wanted to add something small that to me, I see that the issues of precarious work, because the economy is highly cheated, the casual laborers are really hidden. They are hidden in these companies and their voices are not heard. So precarious work should be made as a schedule in the law, and the recognition agreement should be non-negotiable. It should be automatic indeed. So, so that the trade union who are organizing in the private sector can be able to unionize this workforce. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Abdulhu, please, your opinion and final remark.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you for moderating this session. I want to appreciate all the panelists and the individual members for their participation. I think what we must mention is that this idea should not go to the drain, but I think we are going to ask the Secretariat to compile this into a compendium, such that now this will form a basis of a number of aspects, for example, including motions, petitions, and at the end of the day, we should have a benchmark. What constitutes good practices? And I think exploitation of workers, if we are to grow, must be a thing of yesterday. Speakers have mentioned about the NDP4 and a number of other legal frameworks. So all these can work when we actually put workers at the forefront. So I think I must appreciate the gesture. And going forward, I think all this must be compiled into a compendium, and then we should be able to follow up on this number of aspects and ensure that they are addressed. I thank you so much. I submit.
Thank you so much. If there is a brother or a sister who want to say something for the closing so that we close for tonight, okay. Let us pray before we end. O merciful God, look upon us with eyes of sympathy. Lead us not into temptations, but rather deliver us from the hands of those who seek to destroy us. And please, God, grant us the best of leader and leaders who will listen to the plights of workers of our nation and Africa. In the name of God we pray. Amen. Thank you all, and God bless you and good night.
Thank you. Amen.